This is an odd place in our service for the homily. It's entirely an odd service. It's an odd service because there are, in fact, two gospel readings, and there are two huge themes that are held in tandem on this morning. We are caught in exactly this moment between the two stories. The first story is the story of triumph, of joy. The first story is the story of that Palm Sunday entrance into Jerusalem, which is when the great victory of Jesus and his disciples, they've invested their lives in this fellow, and in this moment they are triumphant, coming right into the face of the rulers of Jerusalem. And in a moment, we will hear a deeply contrasting story. A story about how it all ends, this great victory. A story which is essentially about defeat and grief. In the first story, the disciples, you and me, we can feel pretty good. We've stuck with Jesus. In the second story, we're not even there. Only Peter, of all the disciples, is mentioned in this last part of the story. The rest of us have just melted away into insignificance. The Palm Procession story is the culmination of the season of Epiphany and of Lent. Epiphany, you'll remember, gives us all those gospel stories about the light of the world coming into the world's darkness and bringing light and healing and power. The power of God entering into the world. And the Lenten stories we've heard for the last 4 weeks are about how that power in the person of Christ Jesus comes to specific people in their lives, to Nicodemus, to the Samaritan woman, to the man born blind, to Lazarus. In each case, this light of the world comes and calls them to a different understanding of their own lives and of the coming of God into this world. And this story that we've just heard, the one about entering Jerusalem, is the culmination of all that. If those Lazarus and the Samaritan woman and the blind man have all said yes to Jesus, then this is the day we get to say yes. We get to enter into Jerusalem as the culmination of the whole last 2 months of our liturgical life. And then we will hear the second story. And it's not that story at all. It's that all of that has led to defeat, to compromise, to fear, to grief, to death. And nothing comes of the kingdom that we thought we had been building with Jesus. It's ultimately turns to dust. The power of these two stories held side by side is because we in our hearts understand these stories. We know what it is to be triumphant, to be joyful, to be a winner. We know those wonderful moments when we've fallen in love, or we've been acknowledged to have done something worthwhile, or all the wonderful, we've been with the Red Sox when they won the World Series. We we know in our hearts a lot of joy and have given ourselves to that joy, maybe more deeply than other times, but still we know what it is to be joyful and victorious, genuinely victorious. And we carry that in a place in our hearts. But we know as well the other story as well. We know how we have been dark on the inside. We know what grief is. There's not any of us that don't know grief. We know the brokenness that we bring into the world sometimes, and certainly the brokenness that the world inflicts on innocent people day in and day out. We know that in our hearts, and we have been to that place of absolute grief and loss in our own lives as well. And that's the power of this morning. That we hold these two extremes of our human experience together in our own hearts. It is as if the joys that we celebrate are always written against a background of darkness. We know entropy. We know how the world is slipping away. We know the darkness that happens, and the joys then are all that much brighter because they are acts of defiance against that darkness. Because we can be relieved of all that darkness by those moments of joy. We are